Today we've got a La Gran Pregunta of how should Barcelona fans feel about this Champions League campaign. So this is a big idea coming on the back of that Lyon win, getting Manchester United in the draw. For now, Eric, we're trying to get to the bottom of why this Champions League campaign should feel different. And I think that's a good place to start, that this Champions League campaign, now it's not over yet, but it is time for, the last 8 teams are remaining. And it seems that this Barcelona squad is still a heavy favorite in a way that it might not have been in the last 1 or 2, 3 seasons.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think overall the sensations, or the sensaciones, as Sidlow likes to say, really should be positive around the Champions League this year. And I think it's been a point of emphasis for the team. It's been a point of emphasis famously for Messi. Everybody, and for the fans especially, I think everybody is locked in on the Champions League as sort of make or break. And I think largely that's a point of fear and of concern and hope, but it largely, I think it just has to be a point of excitement. We've got a great 8 teams at which Barcelona really do look to be probably the favorites as far as the odds are concerned, with a lot of the sort of European heavyweights knocked out. And broadly, the team is playing well. 5-1 against Lyon was no easy feat, despite them being sort of a less traditional European heavyweight. And the team looks more well-balanced and has more tools in its arsenal than it has for several years now. I think you've seen that with Arthur, whose return to the team has been fantastic, with Dembele, whose speed and talent are really just unbelievable. And the team has added several dimensions from what was a fairly limited but very successful team last year.
Yeah, I agree with that I think last year you saw, and we knew it was going to be a 4-4-2. So with a tongue-in-cheek, you could say Valverde had his Gala 11. This is the way Barcelona play. And because Coutinho did not play in the Champions League last year, there was this feeling that Barcelona were missing this added piece, or this, particularly in the form that Coutinho was in last year compared to this year, because even with him, obviously, there's different ways that they can go about their business. And I think there is an assortment of riches, particularly even on the bench. But the question of Dembele even coming in injured against Lyon, not only did he add something different and completely change that match when Barcelona were, we'll say, holding on to a 2-1, and Dembele's inclusion kind of flipped it on its head. But if it wasn't Dembele in that situation, Malcolm also does a different job. And Malcolm was a guy that wasn't there last year either. That it's not even personnel has expanded. But you're right that I think that there are multiple ways for them to play. And when certain players don't have it, and I think back to the Bernabeu match, or even the Copa del Rey against Real Madrid a few weeks ago as well, that Messi wasn't perfect or wasn't his normal Messi in the way he was against Lyon, against Real Madrid, and yet there were so many other players who got a B+, A- for those games, and that pushes Barcelona over the edge. And I think when you look back at the last few seasons, Roma in the quarterfinal when they crashed out, Juventus in the quarterfinal, Atletico in the quarterfinal back in 2016, and obviously winning in 2015. This chapter from, we'll say, 2016 till now, and it's not saying that Barcelona, it's time, it's their year. We've had to go through a few quarterfinal exits, but in each of those quarterfinal exits, there was a lack of variety and a lack of ideas, and it doesn't feel like that this year. It seems that Rakitic, Busquets, they do their job. Dembele has his job. Suarez has his days, doesn't have his others. Messi's the same way, but it seems like enough guys are always there for Barcelona to be able to get a victory when they need it this season.
Yeah, and I think that's been something that Valverde has worked on really intentionally this season. From the start, he made it very clear that he was pursuing the 4-3-3, that things were going to be mixed up a bit, and the process in which a coach sort of feels out his team and figures out what he has with each player, figures out what new looks he can throw, is a painful process, and that tinkering can be difficult to watch and leads to some uneven performances early on. But ultimately, it really does start to pay off around this time of the year. And I think that's something that we've really come to appreciate is the 4-3-3 works. Dembele slots in naturally there, Coutinho a little less so. Rakitic can deputize for Busquets now. We have rotation in the midfield where Vidal has found a role. He's also experimented with a 4-2-3-1. With Messi as more of a classic number 10, and then somebody on the right balancing him out. There's a lot of different looks that this team can throw at you now, and I think the midfield depth is a crucial part of that. Having 5, 6 capable starters that you can throw on the field and rotate through and feel comfortable with is really important. And each of them sort of changed the tenor of Barcelona's play.
Yeah, and that's an important note that there is a roller coaster that every team goes through in every season. And when you look back and, not to focus on Roma once again, but it felt like Lyon was a little bit of burying some of that, the bad taste in our mouths from a season ago when Barcelona were not just obviously in Champions League, but then a week or two later losing to Levante and losing that unbeaten streak, that it seemed that Barca were on the down of that roller coaster at just the worst time. And that's how it's felt for the last few seasons as the squad has continued to age. And I think it's a good point that the amount of midfield depth that there is now that hasn't been there even in the days of Iniesta and as Xavi was on his last legs as well, that there's a guy that can always be there that doesn't let the form of this team go down far enough that it's time to crash out. That the team it's again at its worst at the moment, seems to be not in terrible form. And that's why I think this is the best in-form Barcelona that we've seen since the last time they did win the Champions League. And I think that's an important note. And talking just emotionally, Eric, do you think that there is no linear, well, now this is because they beat Lyon, now they've buried the hatchet on Roma, but do you think there is something to be said about kind of getting over that hurdle of being a favorite and getting by that level?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And United will be a good test of that. But I think it's really hard to underemphasize, or it's hard to overemphasize how bad the past few years of watching Real Madrid win the Champions League has been on the Barcelona fan base. And it's really kind of brought the team's sort of mentality in some ways back to how you hear people talk about Barcelona in the 90s, where they were a great team but couldn't quite get over that hump. And obviously this is a sort of much higher level and more sort of dramatic over what are still very successful seasons. I mean, practically an undefeated Liga. But it's taken a naturally pessimistic fan base and given them even more to worry about. And what's particularly interesting if you look at the quarterfinal exits is that it's so disconnected from how successful the team has been domestically. You have this team that is hugely triumphant in Spain, and especially the Roma, not just Roma, but Juventus before that, and Atletico before that, and also the Paris loss to begin with before the comeback. That just falls to pieces, and it leaves fans in a place with the Champions League, I think, currently where winning feels less like joy and more like relief. The sort of competitor who is more scared of losing than they love winning. I think that's a really dangerous place to be.
It makes you think that there are fans out there that are happy about a certain style and winning. There's fans that care just about the trophies and winning. There are fans that care just about seeing a lot of goals. There are fans that want complete domination. That's the only way they're going to be happy. And trying to have a general and complete conversation in a fan base when people seem to, at this point, have different goals with the finite goal of being winning. But how does that come about, I think, becomes the question. And what do you individually as a fan find to be your threshold for how much winning and how that winning happens?
Yeah, and I think this is a sort of classic question for the fan base and for Barcelona fans always is sort of style of play versus results or how they mesh together. Certainly there are purists, but I think at the end of the day we just want to enjoy watching games. And it's not a secret that there have been times in the last couple of years that Barcelona just week in week out weren't very fun to watch. And so, I mean, last year they got results, but a lot of those games were a grind. And fans want to love their team and they want to see success, but they also want to, spend 2 hours of their day every week watching something that's fun. But I do think we have that this year. I do think there is some really, it's imperfect, but there are some really nice connections going on. We have exciting players. We have a phenomenal defense without playing defensively. The ability to defend but not limit yourself that way is really important. And I think the team just feels balanced in a way that it hasn't since 2015. But I remember, just bringing it back to the joy, I remember that 2015 spring in which for a few months Barcelona were absolutely unstoppable. And that might be one of the best Champions League campaigns of all time. Playing PSG, playing City, playing Bayern, string of amazing results in Europe, a string of amazing results domestically, and they just couldn't be beaten. They were a phenomenal team that reached a peak of play that was the equal or maybe even better for those few months than Guardiola's team, in terms of results and in terms of the quality of play. But it really felt like at the time that people, the sort of Barca Twitter didn't really get excited until we beat Bayern in the semifinal. There was this feeling, especially after the dramatics at Anoeta in January with Lucho and Messi and everything there, that there's always this waiting for the other shoe to drop until one day you wake up and you've won the Champions League and you're like, oh, that was nice. But if this season, whether or not this season is as successful as that year, what I'm really trying to do myself and what I hope others would do is really just enjoy the ride, in that the team is playing well, they need everybody's support, and really just if the performances are there, if the team is fun to watch and balanced and moving forward and making progress, like whether or not the results fall our way, it's something that's worth sort of cherishing and appreciating and looking forward.